Now, we're seeing a wave of domestic terrorism unfold in Sydney and Melbourne, with synagogues, homes, cars and restaurants vandalised, torched, set alight, firebombed and attacked. This took an even more dangerous and frightening turn this morning, with the overnight firebombing of a childcare centre in Maroubra in Sydney's east. Let me say that again, a childcare centre. The daycare centre was torched just before 1 a.m. with vandalism and anti-Semitic slurs on the building. Now, this is a new level of cruelty, targeting a place where children play. It's only metres from a synagogue and there was significant damage. The attack finally forced the hand of the Prime Minister. But the anti-Semitism genie is well and truly out of the bottle. Now, Albanese said today that he'd hold a national cabinet on anti-Semitism. He said that kind of in passing this morning, and then he held it this afternoon. It was a knee-jerk reaction, rather than giving the Premier's proper time to consider and put forward thoughtful submissions. Unlike Albanese, New South Wales Premier Chris Minns cares deeply about this hatred. When I went to see him today, he said he felt terrible. This was all happening under his watch. It was a personal comment to me. I said to him in the interview, what about the hate preachers who are given the green light to make derogatory and racist remarks against Australian Jews? What about the pro-Palestinian activists who get away with racist chants calling for not just the death, the massacre of Jews in Arabic and in English? Well, Chris Minns, he cares, and he is now pledging new laws to deal with all of this. He announces them for the first time on my show now. Have a look. Premier, thank you so much for your time today. I wish I didn't have to interview you on this topic. What's your reaction to this attack on a childcare centre overnight?
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Shari. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. I mean, I'm horrified by it. I think it's my worst fears and many people in the community's absolute worst fears to see barbaric acts from complete animals. I mean, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, complete bastards that would burn down a childcare centre because it's linked to, the back fence is linked to a synagogue in eastern Sydney in Maroubra. I'm completely horrified by it. I think it's antithetical to everything that's been built up in Australia, and I can completely understand why the Jewish community in New South Wales feels under siege. These attacks are continuing, and I'm devastated by it, but the resilience of both the community and the government is unbowed, and we will catch the people who are responsible for it.
The attacks do seem to be escalating, 2025, same old story. Do you wake up every morning like we do and you just are horrified to think of what's happened overnight?
They are escalating, and I think it's important I say that. I don't want anyone to have the impression that we're trying to sweep this under the carpet or suggest that it's not a major issue. This is the central priority of the government at the moment and New South Wales Police. We are horrified by it, and the escalating nature of the violence, these hate crimes could see, I mean, I don't want to speculate on a terrible crime, but obviously that's what we're concerned about. So, I mean, we watch it very closely. My wife said to me this morning as I got up for work and the reports came through of another fire that it was heartbreaking for the city. We're all devastated by it. And I hope that the Jewish community in particular knows that the vast majority of people that live in New South Wales are with them in solidarity against this horrific crime.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's the perception I have as well. You know, we just both spoke about how they are escalating in frequency and severity. Are you concerned, or do you agree with figures like Alex Rivchin and also David Ossip, who are worried that this could lead to a loss of life?
Look, I am worried about it. I think we should have some candour here, but I do want to say that the New South Wales Police and the government are committed to putting the resources in place to conducting a full investigation. And that is yielding results as we speak, and I can promise the community in New South Wales that this is a major police operation. 20 detectives are working full-time in Strike Force Pearl. That will be The auxiliary will be increased in the coming days, and that strike force will be increased so that we can have the resources in place to fully investigate these crimes. But look, I am concerned about it. As I said, I don't want to downplay it. This is a major, major issue.
We've seen the Prime Minister finally and belatedly call a national cabinet on anti-Semitism. What issues do you think need to be put on the table and discussed?
Well, look, one of the advantages of the Federation is that you can learn from other states, and WA in particular has very strong anti-hate speech laws. Now, I regret we looked at these laws last year, changing them, strengthening them, ensuring that it didn't require private prosecution from concerned citizens, but rather the state taking responsibility for someone who's trying to sow hate and division in our community. I regret we didn't change the laws then, but I've learned our lesson. We are looking at other jurisdictions. We want to introduce those laws. And the reason for it, Shari, is really straightforward, and that is I don't think that these anti-Semitic attacks begin with someone committing a violent offence. I think they begin with words, in particular racist words and vitriolic words that then sparks something in a bad actor who goes and commits a terrible offence. So we want to nip it in the bud at the beginning. We'll do that with law.
And we're seeing this sort of language both by hate preachers, but also pro-Palestinian marches on the streets, where we see language that actually calls for a massacre against Jews. It's in Arabic, these chants. Do you think that needs to be dealt with and put a stop to?
Look, absolutely. Any call to violence in our community on the basis of division and hatred needs to be confronted by civic society in New South Wales. I mean, I've said this many times, but we don't have the same free speech laws that they have in the United States. They're far stronger, they're tougher, and I don't make any excuses for that. I think the reason is because we live in a multicultural community. We accept people from around the world regardless of their faith. But if you come to our country, then there are rights and there are responsibilities, and the responsibility to respect your fellow Australian is paramount. And if we need laws in place to make that point even more self-evident, that's exactly what we'll do.
It feels like there has been a green light given to the hate speech from some of these hate preachers. Do you think that's been the case?
Look, I hope not, and I think it's incumbent upon political leaders, civic leaders, to say that it's never justifiable. I mean,
there've been no laws used against any of the hate preachers who are speaking in extremely offensive language about Jews, though.
Look, the point here, Shari, is that it shouldn't be politicians that pick a prosecution or a private individual. It should be the state. And since similar laws have been in place in Western Australia, there's been 52 prosecutions against individuals who weren't taking the extra step of promoting violence, but were in fact promoting hate towards someone's race. And I think we can have similar laws here in New South Wales so that we can stop it before it happens. Now, I can't promise, no political leader can promise an end to anti-Semitic attacks. Unfortunately, there's some terrible, terrible people in our community. But what I can do is say that we will put all of our resources, as well as changes to the law, to keep the community safe.
So you're just announcing this now, that you're going to look at these tough new laws on hate speech?
That, as well as changes to protest laws out the front of religious institutions. I don't think it's reasonable, if we are serious about freedom of religion and freedom of association, to have somebody vilified for going into, for example, the Great Synagogue in the middle of Sydney because of their religion. They should be free to do that, free from intimidation, free from hatred. So I've made a decision to introduce legislation to put a zone around all religious institutions so that people who practice their religion can do it in peace.
Those laws will certainly be welcome, and let's hope they make a difference. Look, Peter Dutton says there needs to be mandatory minimum sentences for anti-Semitic and terror offences. Do you think this is something that should be put on the table at the National Cabinet? Do you agree this would be a strong deterrent as well?
Well, I think tough sentences need to be part of the deterrent here. And I think that when I've spoken to members of the Jewish community, they've made it incredibly clear to me that they're concerned that a soft touch approach has led to an emboldenment when it comes to attacks in our community. Now, that can't stand. These are serious offences. Those who've been charged or arrested with these serious offences face years in jail if they're convicted. But mandatory minimum sentences are restricted to a very small number of offences in New South Wales. The one that comes to mind is the murder of a police officer. But terrorism offences, rape offences, sexual assault offences, pedophile offences, those that are convicted of those charges face long periods in time, but they're not mandatory minimum sentences. I think my responsibility is to ensure that the police have got resources to effect arrests, and when individuals are put before the courts, that the full force of the law is applied to them. And I think we can do that under the existing regime. Although I want to make it clear, if we need to put in as aggravating factors at sentencing the targeting of anyone, but at the moment we're talking about the Jewish community, that's what we'll do. And secondly, we'll look at offences that drive this kind of behaviour, like, for example, hate speech laws.
You said before that you regret not strengthening your hate speech laws last year. Many of us look back to the Opera House protests and similar protests around that time as the starting point. And the fact that the federal government, from the Prime Minister down, didn't seem to take this issue seriously. They couldn't speak about anti-Semitism without also speaking about Islamophobia. November 2023, Peter Dutton asked the Prime Minister to convene a national cabinet. That's only happening now on this issue in 2025. Do you understand the extreme frustration and anger the Jewish community feels towards the federal government for not taking this issue seriously enough? And now we're in a situation where today a childcare centre has been firebombed.
Well, look, I can't speak on behalf of the Jewish community in New South Wales, but what I can say is that we work very closely with the Prime Minister, and not just at that level, but between state agencies and the Commonwealth agencies, whether they're security agencies, the federal police, the New South Wales police, and where laws need to be changed, that's exactly what we'll do. And I want the community to know that that cooperation is essential in combating this kind of outright and clearly escalating anti-Semitic acts in our community, but it won't stop there. So look, I can't speak on behalf of the Jewish community in New South Wales.
I'm telling you that there's a lot of anger towards the federal government, but you would know that.
Yeah, look, all I can do is focus on my responsibility as the Premier of New South Wales, and I just want to say a couple of things. We will work with Anthony Albanese's government to keep the community safe, and we've done that. And secondly, I can understand that the Jewish community in New South Wales is feeling perhaps for the first time a deep, deep worry and concern about their personal safety and security, or even their family's personal safety and security. I mean, Alex's former house was targeted, I believe, in a targeted attack. Yes. I spoke to him not long after it was revealed in the media. And can I tell you, the kind of strength, the clarity, and the fact that he refused to be cowed by that attack is truly inspiring. And I think that kind of sense in the Jewish community is pervasive. I've got no doubt that community will not be bowed, notwithstanding the real threat that it faces. And I'd like them to know that the vast majority of Australians are on their side. They regard these attacks as completely antithetical to what it means to be Australian, and we are with the Jewish community today and every day. New South Wales Police will not stop until they arrest the people who are responsible for it.
Really appreciate, and we're grateful for your support, and thank you very much for your time now, Premier.
Thanks, Shari.